My wife just poked her head in to make sure I should know I'm in a
We are
public.
now live.
Okay.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Board of Elections, the Kentucky Board of Elections meeting of the 20th of November. My name is Ben Chandler. I'm serving as chair of the state board. And this is the first post-election meeting that we have had. I want to call this meeting to order now and start out by taking roll of the membership, and I will go in the order that I see you all on my computer. Of course, I might just add again that we are not meeting in person as is customary. We're meeting by Zoom call, which so many people are because of the pandemic. With that, I will now take roll. We have 8 members of the board, and I believe they're all here. And if you all could introduce yourself, starting with Lynn Lane.
Good morning. I'm Lynn Lane, retired Ballard County Clerk.
And Dwight Sears. You're on mute, Dwight.
Good morning, member Pulaski County.
And James Lewis.
James Lewis, member Leslie County, retired county clerk.
Corey Skolnick.
Corey Skolnick, member Jefferson County.
Deanna Brangers.
Deanna Brangers, member Jefferson County.
Sherry Whitehouse.
Good morning, Sherry Whitehouse, member Bullitt County.
George Russell.
Good morning, George Russell, member Franklin County.
And we have our Secretary of State, Michael Adams.
Good morning, Michael Adams, Secretary of State, non-voting member.
We also have with us several members of the Board of Elections staff, starting with the Executive Director, Jared Deering. We have Karen Sellers, who is the Assistant Executive Director. We have Taylor Brown, General Counsel, Rachel Pointer, who is the Financial Officer for the State Board of Elections. And I believe the Secretary, Sheila Walker, is on the call, and maybe Alan Hess. In any event, we've got a good group today, and it's good to be with all of you all. And the first thing that I'd like to do is approve the minutes. And I'm sure that everybody here has read the minutes, and I will, and they would be the minutes of November 3rd, 2020, which was election day. And I will endeavor to read those minutes unless you all would relieve me by giving me a motion of approval.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Lynn Lane, a second by James Lewis. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Very
good. Now, I'd like to start this meeting out with a bittersweet moment. We have with us today a highly esteemed member and the longest serving member of the State Board of Elections, and that's George Russell. This is George's last meeting, and it's by George's desire. He's tired of it. He's tired of us, I'm afraid. But no, George has been, I don't think that I can overstate the contribution that George has made to this board, but more importantly, the contributions that George has made through a very long career of public service. I know that early on in George's career, he was a major force with the area development districts in this state. He then spent time working for Wendell Ford when he was governor, and Martha Lane Collins after that, which is when I first met George, which, George, that's a long time ago, my friend.
That was a long time ago.
That's right. But since then, George has been executive director of this agency, the State Board of Elections, and then served for quite a number of years on the board of the State Board of Elections. And if there's anybody who knows more about elections generally in Kentucky than George, I don't know who it is. George, you just have been a fount of knowledge, a fount of wisdom, just a wonderful member of this board for quite some time. And I can tell you personally that I'm going to miss your wise counsel. I'm going to miss having you here by all of our sides throughout the process. It's made everything that we've done better having you around. So we're going to miss you, my friend. I know you've got lots of traveling to do. For those of you who don't know, George is one of the all-time great world travelers too. One thing that I failed to mention is George has also been an observer, an election observer in many, many countries throughout the world. And maybe, George, you can tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I participated in 19 international elections, everywhere from Kazakhstan to Cambodia to El Salvador to Ukraine, Belarus, Moscow, Albania, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Montenegro, Bulgaria, I don't know, sometimes 2 and 3 times. When I said Ukraine, the part where I was in Ukraine is now in Russia. But anyway, I've enjoyed every bit of it, and the opportunity I've had working with you all. It's been about 30 years working in the election process.
Wow.
So I've enjoyed it.
Well, it's an incredible body of work, George, and an amazing, you just made amazing contributions along the way. And hearing that roster of countries that you've been to, I think many of us have not only not been to those countries, some of us had never heard of them. But it's just a remarkable body of work and incredible experience that you've had over the years. Would anybody else like to comment?
Ben, yeah,
Yes.
I'd like to.
James Lewis.
George, yeah, George, it's been a pleasure. We've worked on election issues for, I was clerk 33 years, and you were executive director, I believe, about the time I came in as clerk or shortly thereafter. And you have been a driving force in the election process in Kentucky, and you will be missed by all of us, and certainly the people who appreciate a fair and honest process for our election process. But good luck on your journeys, because I know you'll be doing a lot of them.
Thank you, James.
I would like to say something too, Ben.
Thanks, Lynn Lane.
George, like James, I've known you for a long time. And I first met you, of course, when I was county clerk. And I just want you to know you always had the love and respect of county clerks. And you always worked so well with us and helped us through the process for many, many years. And I've also enjoyed being with you again for a short period of time on this board. And I'm like James, I wish you the very best. And we will miss you and your knowledge.
Thank you, Lynn. It's all technical now. When I first started, it was getting a fax machine. Now it's computer things that I don't even understand.
I know. We've seen a lot of changes, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Yes.
Well, you've done a good job of transitioning, George.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of transition. Michael, George has worked with, I don't know how many Secretary of States, but quite a few.
Well, I'll add something if I can. I was sworn into the State Board of Elections on July 22nd of 2016. I served on the board before I was Secretary of State, and this is the first time I got to meet George. We were sworn in together. Our terms were at the same time, and so I got to meet him. I didn't know really a whole lot about the board at that point, and George has been really helpful to me in learning so much, and has really helped me grow into this position as well. So I want to say as a Republican to a Democrat, I'm so grateful to have someone of George's stature and knowledge and background assisting this board. It's made a huge difference this year. And another point, George tried retiring earlier this year and we wouldn't let him. His term expired April 15th and he was ready to go on a trip. And we begged him to not do it. We begged him to stay with us and help us through this process. And I'm so glad that he did. We all owe him a great debt.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Chairman, if I might.
That.
Oh, sorry, Deanna, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. George.
Deanna Brangers.
I've just enjoyed working with you so much. I mean, much like Michael, I came to the board. I didn't know you. We maybe sparred a few times, but I have enjoyed working with you. It has been truly an honor, but even more so, it's an honor to call you my friend now. And I'm going to miss you a lot. But
Well,
I know how to get you back, because I'm going to make you cookies and you'll come back and see us, right?
right. In fact, when we can meet in person again, I want to visit all of you in a meeting in your new facility.
Yes. But just
We're-
know
we're-
you're going to
we're
be missed a lot.
We're going to force you to come visit, George. Whether you
Okay.
like it or not, we're going to make you.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a couple remarks?
Yes, Corey Skolnick.
I want to give you two thank yous, George. The first is just as a citizen. I didn't know you before I joined the board earlier this year, but as I've come to know you and hear about all the wonderful things that you've done, just some of which have been mentioned today, it's clear that you've been a rock and a key decision maker and participant in what has been a good election system in our state and in fact the world for a long time. And so just as a citizen who's benefited from that, I want to say thank you. As a board member, I joined the board earlier this year, and we've gotten to know each other mostly via Zoom before we get on these public meetings, just chit chat and hello and talking about families and what we're doing. And so while I want to congratulate you for everything you've done in the election realm, I just want to thank you for being a nice guy, being very welcoming and easy to work with. So I look forward to what you still have to do, and thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you, Corey.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
You let Sherry, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, George, I just want to personally thank you as well as a newbie coming into this whole process a few years ago, thinking that, I'd heard that this board was generally overall pretty easy. And boy, have we been through a couple of years of learning and being thrown in the fire to handle situations. And I just am so grateful to have had you as a mentor and, taking us through the last few years that I've served. So I just, your character of your servant's heart, it just speaks, everything about you. And so I love you and I'm going to miss you as well. And my gosh, the knowledge that you bring to this table will be dearly, dearly missed. You'll probably get a few phone calls. Best wishes for travels.
This board works so well together. That's what I'm going to miss, how well we all work together.
Dwight Sears.
Yes, sir. Thank you, George. I remember the first time I met you, we were actually walking into my first meeting and I was a little nervous and I asked what to expect. And you said, you'll be fine. Usually we're in and out of here 45 minutes or so. And I think 4.5, 5 hours later, we were still sitting there. So it was an interesting time, but I'm going to miss you. I'm not going to say goodbye because I have a feeling you're going to be on the speed dial for all of us. And but I do appreciate probably more than anything the little side conversations that we've had, being able to sit next to one another over the last couple years when we were able to meet in live settings. I really enjoyed those conversations, and I'll cherish those. And I appreciate everything that you've brought to me. As someone alluded to earlier, we didn't always agree on everything, but at the end of the day, we're friends, and I'm going to cherish that forever, my friend.
Thank you.
Well, George, you've gotten unanimous participation from the board today, and all of it just comments that I think are certainly well deserved. You've been a rock for all of us, and as Sherry said, in a year that none of us expected. We all have I think all of us thought that being on the Board of Elections would be pretty straightforward, but this has been a year unlike any other in the history of the Commonwealth. And we've had to make decisions. We've had to do things that I don't think any of us ever thought we'd have to do on this board. And we blazed a lot of new territory, and it's been comforting, I think, to every single one of us to have you around. Now, I think our executive director wants to maybe put a cherry on top of this.
Thank you, Chairman. George, I just wanted to say on a personal and professional note, I can't thank you enough for the support, you've provided me in the guidance. I will say that, a lot of board members don't know, but like when I get stuck on a historical content or context of wanting to know how something was formulated or what the thought process was going into it, all I had to do was call George, and he was always there, always knew exactly what I was talking about and knew what I was looking for. And so not only at the board level has George provided that as a resource, but I will also say I've been privileged enough to serve on the board of directors for the National Association of State Elections Directors, and George had the privilege of being president. Now I'm a few years off from that still, but I will say that George is still well remembered and fondly remembered at NASED as well. And George and I were just talking about that briefly yesterday, as a matter of fact, and some of the people that he still recognizes that are at NASED. But George, I just wanted to thank you personally for your service to this board, and also in your service to the board as executive director. And I think that can't go unnoticed as well. And because of that, I'd like to say that the staff are also incredibly grateful for you. I will say Sheila texted me that she says she's glad she's not on camera because she's getting really teary-eyed. So George, I know the staff really appreciates you and everything you've done. And one of the things that we were talking about when you were having some technical difficulties with your computer is that when we open the new building and the new facility, we're going to have you come in and christen it, and we'll have a nice little reception for you. So hopefully that won't be too far from now, but we'll have everyone come in person and have an official in-person reception for you.
Hey, that's a deal. Thank you.
Awesome.
When we can get rid of this COVID, George, we're all looking forward to giving you a big hug.
We'll all be traveling too.
There you
Work
go.
around your schedule.
Yeah, that's right. We'll work around your schedule. All right. Before the rest of us start crying, let's get on to business. We've got an important thing that we've got to undertake today, and that is to certify the election. The election that took place in this state over a period of time and culminated on election day, November the 3rd. Again, as was said before, it was unlike any other election, and it was one that I think everybody on this call can very easily say it's an election that we can be proud of. We've never done anything like it. We have had complete bipartisan support led by the governor and our Secretary of State, who have just been exemplary in this whole process at a time when things were not happening that way in other states around the country. We also had a board that voted together almost the entire time, despite the fact that we're split evenly by party. It's just really a remarkable thing. And then, we have an executive director. Even though you're on this call, Jared, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. You have been the architect of this thing. You have put together an incredible amount of information for all of us that you gleaned from states around the country, and you have been assisted by an able staff. Your staff has worked tirelessly, hour after hour after hour, to get this thing done. We're very grateful. And I don't want to forget for a minute 120 county clerks and their staffs from one end of this state to the other, who have had to undertake an election and oversee an election, 120 separate elections in each of their counties. They've had to oversee the whole thing in their election boards, unlike anything else they've ever done. They've never had to run an election like this, and they did it almost flawlessly. I'm sure there were a couple of little hiccups here and there, but all of them were so minor that they escaped notice. It was just an incredible achievement by so many people in this state, and I, for one, couldn't be prouder. With that, and you all, if you all want to say something about that in a little while, I'll certainly allow anybody to say anything they want. But right now, I think we ought to just go ahead and get the election certified. I don't know, Mr. Secretary, maybe you'd like to speak to this, to the certification of the election, because I know we've had to get the results from you.
Sure, thank you. So the process that we followed this year in so many respects was new and novel for Kentucky, different, sometimes controversial here and there. But for the most part, we've been true certainly to our laws as written and intended. We've had some additional flexibility given to us by the legislature to make changes where necessary, and we've certainly done that. And we've had a very successful election on so many fronts. The highest turnout we've ever had in a Kentucky election, over 2 million Kentuckians. But the one thing that we really didn't change was the process for certification. So the things that we've done over the past couple of weeks to finalize this process, those are not new. And those are what we have done for many, many years and have been laid out by law and followed here. The process, I get a lot of questions about this, you all probably too, about what the process is for counting votes and what software we use and what companies are involved and so forth. We talked about this last time, but I'll reiterate. We don't have companies counting our votes. We don't have foreign actors with any access to our votes. We count them ourselves. The county clerks count them. They provide that information to me, not over the internet, not through a computer program, but literally on fax pieces of paper that they send to us. My staff have been working tirelessly for the last 2 weeks to look at those numbers, double check them, spot errors. We've not had any major shifts. We've had a little shift here or there, one vote, another vote here or there. It wasn't on the initial submission, not because it was lost, but just because provisional votes, write-ins, things like that aren't always caught at the very outset in the initial crush of trying to get information out on election night to the public in a prompt way. So there was a very, very slight deviation between the final results and the unofficial results on election night. CNN does not count the votes. Fox News does not count the votes. MSNBC does not count the votes. We count the votes. We do it. So those numbers have been coming into us. There was an initial report on election night, which was not something unusual. Obviously, we have results on election night. That was harder this year than it's been typically under the circumstances, but we still got it done. And I'm really proud that we had 97% of the votes counted election night. That put us way ahead of the rest of the country, as we saw. But that's not final. We had another upload of information later that week once we had a chance for any remaining absentee ballots that had been timely mailed to be received by county clerks. There was a few, but not really that many. And then we gave another day for cure. One of the great success stories of this election has been that by point of comparison, back in 2018, we had about 7.5% of absentee ballots spoiled for voter error. The voter made a mistake that might have been caught if the voter had voted in person, but the voter voted remotely, and unfortunately, some people's votes were not counted, and they were never even notified that their votes were not counted. This year, given a much higher proportion of folks voting absentee, we wanted to make sure that we had a process for them to be contacted and given a chance to fix those problems. The fail rate was 0.4% in this general election. It's pretty remarkable. 626,000 absentee ballots, way more than we normally have, and still that low a fail rate. So I'm really proud of that. That was a testament to the work of this board, its efforts to contact voters, our clerk's efforts to contact voters, and then the time we gave voters through the 9th of November to cure those errors. So then on the 10th of November, we got a final report. My staff have been working the last 10 days to double check those numbers. I've had, I want to especially recognize Heather Quinn, my elections director. She has been here till 4 a.m. Some of these nights running these numbers. These numbers are correct. Again, there are some deviations with initial numbers. That's to be expected. That happens every single election in Kentucky. You always have some tiny shifts. You have some write-ins that are accounted for and so forth. But I think it's obvious there's been no change in any election result that has been previously reported. As a matter of fact, we had 2 recanvases requested, which our office performed. One in a race that was about a 19-point difference, and of course there was no change in outcome there. We had a judicial race in Eastern Kentucky, 38-vote difference in that race as of election night. So then we did a recanvass as requested, came out the exact same. So the important point here is nothing has changed substantively. There's been no election outcome that has been changed from what's been previously reported. So I just want everyone to have full assurance that these numbers are correct, and we should go ahead and certify and formally notify the winners.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you for all of that wonderful work that you've done to stay on top of this and oversee an election with a great deal of integrity. Thank you to your staff too. I know that they have worked very, very hard to get this done. Mr. Executive Director, would you like to add anything to this before we certify? Do we need to tell everybody what we're certifying?
Certainly. I think, I would like to reiterate the Secretary's gratitude to Heather Quinn. I know her and his staff have done a tremendous job of going through these meticulously, calling county clerks, making sure that there are justifiable reasons to be able to certify these and that everything is correct and ready to certify. And with that, I would recommend to the board their full certification.
And we're certifying which elections? Would you like to give the public some idea?
So this will be all elections held on November 3rd, from the presidential down to Senate, congressional, as well as all of our state races, as well as the local races as well. So the state races is what we'll be certifying here, including the congressional seats and Senate and presidential.
Very good.
And judicial.
Yes.
And the judicial races. And what about the constitutional amendments?
Taylor, do you want to give a brief, is anything come in? There were several that had come in. I just want to make sure that we are on track, that nothing came in from that court case.
No changes as of right. I looked at it when the meeting started. Let me look at it right this minute.
So just so the public understands, Chairman, there was a lawsuit that had petitioned that the constitutional amendment specific to Marcy's law not be certified, but that court case is not, looks like, as of Taylor's suggestion.
Yeah.
So
I've received no notice, so proceed.
Very good. I will accept a motion to certify these results.
So moved.
So moved.
I think, was that Deanna that I heard first? Motion by Deanna Brangers. We have a second by James Lewis. Does anybody want to discuss this? Hearing no discussion, I will accept a vote. All in favor of certifying the results of the November 3rd election, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Very good. The results are certified. Thank you all very much. And again, thank you for a wonderful, wonderful effort on the part of everybody. At this point, we will move on, unless anybody else wants to add anything about the election, we will move on to our financial report. Ms. Pointer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So on page 5 of your board book is the general fund expenditures for this month. You will notice that there is a negative number for the month of October, which is strange for us. But that is because we did implement on October 1st the Coronavirus Relief Fund that was issued to us. So some of the expenses that we had previously paid were moved over to that fund. So you'll see at the breakdown at the bottom of page 5, the individual transactions that compose that number. And you'll see where we moved some of those expenses that we had previously paid over because they were applicable to the Coronavirus Relief Fund. So that is all on page 5. Page 6 is a breakdown of just what we have left and what expenditures we have in our HAVA Title I, our 2018 and our 2020 security grants. And then page 7 is the original CARES Act breakdown that we received from the Election Assistance Commission. At this point, we have fully expended all of the federal funds for that CARES Act grant. We do have $219,896.64 left that we need to make up in state match. At this time, we've talked to OSBD, the Office of the State Budget Director, and we've worked out a plan. Our goal is to move the rest of those funds over to completely close out the CARES Act by the end of FY21. So that's contingent on anything that happens for the rest of the year, but the plan is to have that completely state matched by the end of FY21. Page 8 is the breakdown. This is the additional funding that we received for coronavirus relief for the general election. And we, at this point, this is also where we have tried to create all of our election expenses. So this is where the total is coming from on that page. I went ahead and included some of the November expenses. So these were all the expenses that have hit our coronavirus relief fund up to Monday. This is telling us that we've spent about $5.4 million so far on the general election. We're also going to, please keep in mind that we have some unreceived invoices at this point. We still have some processing. The counties are still turning in their postage reimbursements for the general election. So we're going to see this number go up, but we're not going to see it go down. So right now we're at 5.4 million with anticipated costs going forward. Your balance sheet is next. That's going to give you a total of all of your interest-bearing funds, all of your HAVA Title I and Title II grants. And then the last page is just a list of all of your interest-bearing accounts and what we have in those to date.
Mr. Chairman, if I might. I think you're on mute.
So I am. Thank you. Mr. Deering.
I wanted to make, thanks, Rachel, for that. And if the board has any questions, I know Rachel will still be available. I did want to mention one thing during the budget session is we did have a surplus of one item due to the nature of having to order supplies prior to the election before we had finalized everything, just the nature of logistics. We over-purchased drop boxes. Now, the good note here is that there will not be a waste of taxpayer dollars in that process because we were able to secure a grant through the Vote at Home Foundation, and they were able to supply us with enough money to purchase those. So no taxpayer dollars will be expended out on the surplus of drop boxes. Now, the benefit is we'll still receive those. We were able to transmit several of those drop boxes to Arizona prior to purchase. So technically we didn't sell them. We were able just to give them ability to go to our vendor and purchase them before us because they were in need of some. So that took some of off our hands, but we're going to have them delivered to the state and we'll store them. My hope is that I know the secretary is looking at different legislation, and drop boxes might be something either we do through regulation or through statute. When that happens, we will still have more drop boxes for the counties to then utilize at no expense.
Very good. Ms. Pointer, are you finished with your presentation?
I am, unless there's any questions.
Anybody have any questions about the financial reports? All right. Everything seems to be in good order. Thank you very much. Now we go to the secretary and the executive director for any further comments that they have. Mr. Secretary, you're next on the agenda, and I don't know if, I know you've already talked some about the election. I don't know if you've got anything else to add or not.
No, sir, I don't. I do have a couple of things I want to throw out for you all and people who are watching as well. First, the Electoral College, as required by the Constitution of the United States and required also by Kentucky law, is going to meet on December 14th at noon. That's not from me. It's from the Constitution. We're going to exercise our responsibilities. We're still working through exactly how we're going to be able to do that in a way that is safe, in a way that ensures that we follow our obligations, but still is cognizant of the current reality with COVID. Preliminarily, at least, it looks like it's going to be held in the Senate chamber here in the state capitol. Normally, we do this in the Supreme Court chamber. I really like that venue. That's where I got to watch the Electoral College performance functions 4 years ago when I was on the state board as a member. It's a great place to do it. It's just not going to be feasible this year, I don't think. They've offered us the space, but with very, very extreme restrictions that I think would make it just not feasible to have really any more than just the electors themselves and a couple of dignitaries, and not really have any availability for the public or media. And I really want this to be an open ceremony within reasonable limits, but as open as possible to allow people to attend it. So it looks like this is not final yet, but it looks like we're going to be doing that in the state Senate chamber. It's a much bigger room. And so we'll still have restrictions, but we think that we'll be able to host you all, of course, the electors, the governor and other dignitaries, and then at least hopefully some media and some public. It won't be the event we would like to have, unfortunately, but we will follow the Constitution and we'll make this as open as we possibly can to as many people as we possibly can. Next point.
What time do you propose to have that event on the 14th?
It's actually set by law for noon.
Very good.
And so we'll certainly assemble a little earlier than that to walk everybody through it and make sure everyone's on the same page about what to expect. It's actually a very heavily scripted and regulated process to make sure that we follow the requirements of federal and state law for how this process is supposed to work. We do this every 4 years. We've got a pretty good guidebook that I inherited from my predecessor about how to perform this. So we'll follow that. But by law, it's high noon on the first Wednesday after the second Monday in December, which is going to be, the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December. That's December 14th at noon. So I'm not sure exactly whom I'll see there and where, but I think I'll hopefully see as many of you as would like to come at the Senate chamber that day at that time. Really quickly, there was a reference to future legislation. I'm certainly not going to put the board in a position to take a position on this legislation. I just want to keep you all apprised of what I would like to see us do going forward. Obviously, we worked together really closely this year, not just for one election, but two, formulating plans for how to pull off a safe and secure election and ensure people were not disenfranchised. We certainly did that with great success. Some of those things I think need to go back to normal. And some of those things I think we should try to keep permanent. I've already had initial conversations with staff of the governor, with leadership in both the House and the Senate. I've gotten green lights to begin a process of putting together legislation. No promises that it'll be successful. I don't expect any significant headwinds based on party or ideology because the things that I'm offering are completely non-ideological. They're just really about making voting easier for our people. But I'm also realistic about the fact that we're walking into a short session that may be even shorter potentially under the circumstances. Our last session was aborted, as you may remember from earlier this year. And they've got a pretty tough session as it is with having to pass a budget, which they normally don't have to do in a short session, plus some other things that are very time sensitive. So they've given me the green light to take a stab at it. It may be something that we just have to come back in 2022 and finish the drill. But I'm going to try to get something passed in 2021 if I possibly can. The four big things I'd like to see, and I have some interesting statistics for you I'm going to share with you as well about the clerk's viewpoints on this stuff. But the four things I think that there's most consensus on with the general public, with the legislators, the governor, and others. The four key things we did this year that I think we have the best likelihood of keeping, in no particular order. Number one, early voting. Early voting was really, really popular. 45% of our voters who voted in the general election voted in person early over the span of the 3 weeks that we made available. I don't think that we need 3 weeks to vote in every election. I don't think that's realistic. But I do think at least a few days makes a big difference. It makes it easier on some level for the clerks and the counties. It certainly makes it easier for the voters, for working people. I don't think we need 3 week long elections, but I think a few more days, maybe the Thursday, Friday, Saturday before. Saturdays are really helpful to people who work during the day on weekdays. I've been advised not to go for the Monday, the day before election day, because the clerks really need that day to kind of smooth out the prior voting and prepare for election day itself. So I had pushed Friday, Saturday, Monday. I've now changed that to Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's consistent with what we saw this year, where we had pretty good turnout over the first 2.5 weeks of early voting. And then at the end, it really spiked. I think that's probably consistent with my idea of having expanded voting, but limiting it to a few days to really reflect that reality. It also addresses the concern that's been raised about having long elections not being fair to the candidates, and about long elections resulting in votes being cast early that then voters might regret later. So I think maybe a window of a few days going into that election is probably the best outcome and has the best chance of actually being passed by the legislature. The next thing is keeping vote centers. Vote centers are really popular this year. Full disclosure, I proposed vote centers in legislation before the pandemic struck. That was a tool that we reached into our toolbox for in the span of this election to make voting easier for people, but also make it easier for the counties to actually conduct the voting. It's a much more efficient model than the old style model that we followed for 200 years. The next item is the cure process. We talked about this earlier, so I won't belabor it, but we really helped re-enfranchise a lot of people who committed innocent errors that would have been caught had they voted in person. We were able to catch those and help those voters fix those problems and get these people's votes to count. It made a big difference. And then last, keeping the portal. Everyone loves the portal. The clerks love it because it saves them a lot of labor. The voters love it. It saves them from having to call the clerk's office. They can just request this ballot from the comfort of their own homes. They can also track their ballots electronically and have total transparency on their vote. But also it really helps me. It really helps the joint task force I have with the Attorney General and the state police under the Beshear administration and our federal partners to actually be able to surveil the election, and in particular the absentee part of that, by seeing where all these ballots are. We've never had a centralized process to allow the chief election official or other officials to monitor at a state level the absentee voting process. And I think that's a reform that makes it both easy to vote and hard to cheat, which is my tagline. So last point, I'll give you some interesting statistics. This is what I think, and that's great, but I'm not the only player here, obviously. You all are really relevant to this process, and so are the clerks. So before I rolled out any of this stuff publicly in media comments, I took a survey of the clerks. 115 clerks responded to my questions, whether they supported these ideas or not, and I'll give you the statistics. Early voting, 79% of the clerks surveyed, 115 of our 120 clerks responded. 79% of them support early voting in some capacity. Some want a longer period, shorter period. They're kind of all over the map, but we've got 79% that support at least a few days of early voting. And these are the folks that actually have to do it, conduct it. So that's pretty significant. 92% of the clerks support vote centers. 92% of them want at least the ability to have a vote center, a single location. Doesn't mean there's just one place to vote, but a single location where any voter can go vote and know that they don't have to be in their precinct to vote. In fact, 63% of the clerks favor a requirement of a vote center, at least one vote center in the county. As y'all will remember, in November, we encouraged, of course, way more than just one location to vote in every county, but we did require the counties to have at least one vote center. 63% of the clerks want that kept permanent in state law. On the cure process, again, all of this stuff is responsibilities for the clerks to have to perform. 70% of the clerks want the cure process to remain permanent. Even though this creates more work for them, they appreciate how it helps re-enfranchise voters who made simple, innocent errors. And on the portal, this won't surprise you, 89% of the clerks want to keep the portal. Again, this makes everyone's job easier, including theirs. So I've shared those statistics with President Stivers and Speaker Osborne, and I think that's probably why we actually have a real shot. I can't calculate the odds yet, but I think we have a real shot of really getting this done. So I'm really, really encouraged by that. I think those are all things we've all voted for, at least in the context of an emergency this year. But I think those are things that people liked coming out of this, and there's a pretty decent opportunity to make them permanent. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for that analysis and those thoughts. I think it's going to be really interesting as we go forward to see what we can do on this. And I guess for everybody, it's just stay tuned as we move forward. Anybody else want to comment on that subject? All right, hearing none, I will turn it over to you, Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate it. I know we had a good opportunity to thank George for his service to our board. Unfortunately, George is not the only person leaving the board today. I would like to, point of personal privilege, thank Tom Bain. Tom Bain, many of you might not know Tom, but Tom is one of our senior engineers. He's been instrumental in standing up our voting systems, including the success of this election that we've had this year. He also was instrumental in the development of our voter registration system. Tom's going to retire. He has a very large piece of land not too far from here, but he's going to turn it into a shelter for dogs. He has a passion for dogs, and I know he's incredibly looking forward to some time off and some free time to himself. He has said that he will come back and help from time to time with us as an advisor when we need him. We'll be going into development for voter registration 2.0, and he's going to be instrumental in that process as well. So, but I definitely wanted to, highlight his work and his time here on the board, and just how much he means to all of us and the work that he's done. So I wanted to give him a lot of credit for that. Other than that, I'm incredibly thankful to this board, your consummate professionalism throughout this entire process, the leadership shown by Secretary Adams and Governor Beshear. I just can't say enough about that, and the fact that they've been willing to cross party lines in a very reasonable way that allowed for us to have a very successful election. We'll always have a debt to both of them for that process. Other than that, I'll keep my remarks short, and that is it for today.
Very good. Well, thank you for those remarks, and thanks to Tom. Tom has I know been a incredibly important part of this process, and it just highlights the fact that we've got a number of excellent career employees who do a great service for the people of Kentucky. And Tom, hooray for you. Glad that you're going to get some time to spend for yourself and for the dogs. All right. Do we have any other business? Any other business that anybody feels like we need to transact today or discuss?
Renisa Abner, the KCCA president, had sent us a message that unfortunately she couldn't join today's meeting. They're having their KCCA meeting right now, and so she's currently in that. But she did want to send us her gratitude and her best wishes as well.
Okay, very good. I guess the only thing left to do is confirm our next meeting. When will that be, Mr. Deering?
I was actually going to recommend to the board, since there are no immediate necessary items coming up in December and the holidays coming around, I was going to recommend the board postpone the December meeting until January. And then Sheila, what we can do is we'll post that and provide the board with the normal date, which I don't have in front of me, but we'll pull that down and we'll get that over to you.
I believe if I'm not mistaken, it's the 19th of January.
That sounds correct. But that would be my recommendation. Obviously, if there's a need, we can always reconvene in December. But that might be something the board would like to take a vote on, or as chairman, if you just want to let us know whether or not this is appropriate to move forward in that.
Well, I'll just see if everybody's all right with that. If we don't really have any pressing business in December that we know of now, I don't see any reason to have a meeting. But we of course keep the option open. If there's anything we need to do, we can call a meeting. Is that all right with everybody?
Fine.
All right. In that case, we will plan on having our next regular meeting on the 19th of January, barring unforeseen circumstances. All right. Thank you all. Thank you all for a great meeting. George,
Yes.
Hooray for you.
Thank you, Ben.
I will accept a motion to, Jared, you want to say something else?
I do, and I really apologize for extending this out. I wanted to say one thing. I was incredibly proud today when I had the ability to sign the certificate for Joshua Branscombe, former chairman of our board, who won his race in the 83rd representative district. And so I am incredibly proud of him. And it was a very nice personal privilege of mine to be able to personally sign his document. So I just wanted to send our gratitude to him and our congratulations, and mine specifically. So I just wanted to make sure.
I'm glad you brought that up, Jared. Hooray for Josh. He was a wonderful board member, a very collegial board member, and I know he's going to be an excellent legislator.
He's actually my state rep, so I'm hoping he'll keep my driveway cleaned. And
I hope you voted for him. I hope you voted for him, Dwight.
I did. Hey, I also want to thank Jared and Karen and the entire team, Taylor and Rachel and Sheila and Alan, that's all on this call. But thanks for coming out the last couple of days. And I know you put a lot of miles on the vehicles the last couple of days getting some of these certificates signed. So I thank you for that. I know it helped all of us not having to drive to Frankfurt.
We're still forcing Ben and
agree.
George to come in today, and Sherry, you're going to be joining us as well. But we'll meet Sherry halfway. But we're forcing Ben and George to come in to sign them
What time do you prefer?
as soon as you can, sir.
Okay, around 1 o'clock, 1:30?
That would work.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, very good. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A
Second,
motion by member Sears. Who gave me the second?
Lynn,
I
did.
Member Lane. Very good. I will then just declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.